tell you what.
All right, everyone, welcome to our next episode of the Retic Lounge, and I am Lucas, your co-host. Nathan is not going to be here for this episode. He is taking the week off. It's got some stuff going on, but he'll be back next week with us. I'm excited for this episode. I'm trying to think right now in the back of my mind what number episode this is. I think we're on 127, but this is our first species spotlight that we are doing, and I don't know, it's been, I think, like 2-3 months maybe, I'm really excited to jump into the species spotlight. Number one, because it's not a snake. We're going to be talking about monitors today, but number two, they're an uncommon smaller monitor that I am actually about to get a pair of. So I am having Ryan McVeigh on, owner of VivTech. And Ryan McVeigh is going to be talking about Peacock Monitors. Varanus agangaga. I don't know what they're called. We'll find out when he comes in. I forgot what the specific name for them is. But Peacock Monitors are these beautiful, brilliantly small, manageable monitors that have not been popular in the hobby for a while. And I don't know many people that are actually working with them. Ryan's the expert when it comes to Peacock monitors. If I'm not mistaken, he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he has the largest collection of Peacocks in the States. So I'm excited to jump in. He also recently did a presentation on them. And so I figured, like, he just did an entire presentation on them. Why not have him on and basically kind of do that? Before we jump into that, I do want to give a few shout outs. And those are absolutely to our sponsors. So I want you guys to go ahead and use code Reptile Lounge 20 for 20% off of your next rodent order with Cold Blooded Cafe. I want to give a shout out to Des over at Cold Blooded Cafe. Thanks for partnering with us. And if you guys have not bought from Cold Blooded Cafe, you will not be disappointed. They have great quality rodents. Another thing that I wanted to do as well is we do have our ads, right? We have our ads that run in our episodes, right? But I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors as well. So I want to thank AE Foundry. So Adler, if you guys are looking for logo, video work, social media assistance, Adler is your guy. He provides top-notch graphics and marketing designs while still being a really good priced individual. I also want to talk and thank Heartland Reptiles. We actually just had him on the Chondro Lounge to talk about his new chondro enclosures, but Heartland Reptiles and Heartland Enclosures, again, when we're talking about reticulated pythons, there is not a better, more durable, long-lasting enclosure than a Heartland enclosure. Want to give a shout out to Ryan, who is a guest of ours and our affiliate sponsor with VivTech products. They have just about every husbandry need that you can have. And to be honest, they probably have some of the best snake bags out there for shipping out snakes. I love the logo that they have on there. I need to find out who his source is so I can make some live exotic ones. But and I also want to give a big shout out to AE Stoney with AE Stoney hooks, aestoney.com. Guys, the hook quality that they have is amazing. I'm not the biggest fan of metal hooks. I know that a lot of people favor them, but I've always noticed that a metal tip, my retics jump to it. They don't like it. I think that AE Stoney, I've been using those hooks for 5 years now. Haven't had to replace a single one. They're great hooks, and they have a bunch of other products as well. But I was about to look over to my screen to be like, Nathan, you ready? But he's not here. Anyways, let's go ahead and get Ryan on. Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram at AE Foundry. When it comes to housing your retics, trust me, you're going to want an enclosure that will be just as strong and durable as your reticulated python. The Heartland reptile enclosure is next level tough and will outlive you and your retic by several generations. Heartland reptile enclosures are designed and manufactured out of powder-coated aluminum to provide the highest quality and longevity available in the reptile enclosure. What makes them even better is they are lighter than your PVC and plastic enclosures out there and are extremely tough. Stop playing around with plastic enclosures for your large constrictors and step up your enclosure game with the Heartland reptile enclosure. To inquire about one of these enclosures, speak to Jordan himself at Heartland Reptiles on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Here on TRL, we preach about the importance of using hooks, feeding tongs, and other tools with your reticulated python all the time. Animal Equipment by Stoney not only has all the tools you need for any snake you keep, but they have the absolute best hooks on the market. What sets Animal Equipment by Stoney's hooks apart from the other guys is their polycarbonate hook ends that provide a warm feel that won't disturb or bother your retic, ensuring a positive interaction from the get-go. Since 2008, AE Stoney has been supplying zoos, herpetologists, and other animal professionals with their tools. It's time for you to step your hook game up and buy an AE Stoney hook. To learn more and purchase one of their amazing products, visit aestoney.com. What's up, man?
What's going on? How are you doing?
Good. How'd that go? Like the solo, I saw you watching.
It went good. It went good. You look
It's weird.
Pro. Yeah.
It's weird. How's everything going, man?
Everything's good. It's been a crazy kickoff to the year, but everything is going really well.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. I'm glad. We had the chance to kind of catch up, and as we were talking about the Peacock Monitors that we're going to, and I know you had a massive surgery that just happened and everything, and I kind of just wanted to get an update from you. How's everything going with that, the recovery process?
It's going so much better.
Good.
So I had surgery on, kind of my organs, and I had to move they had to clean up some adhesions and scar tissue from surgery I had as a baby. And it was causing some problems. And anytime they move your organs, or your intestines, they can just not turn back on. So that happened. And about 4 days after getting out of the hospital, I had to go back. And that sucked. But as for like the scar and everything else is healed, I'm pretty good. Every once in a while, I feel a little weird pull, a new adhesion or something like that. But I would say I'm at like 95%. I was blacksmithing last weekend, swinging a hammer.
Okay, so that's huge. Yeah,
yeah.
That's we're on the up if that's the case.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, man. So real quick before we even jump into the Peacock stuff, we've probably talked about this once, but you have so many amazing species, and I kind of just want to. So for those of you that like haven't tuned in to VivTech or Ryan and Erica's collection, they keep such a diverse collection with such amazing animals. They've had animals that they've brought in from zoos that kind of went out. Some of the most exotic of the exotic species out there. Can you kind of go into like what is it right now that you are working on, and what do you have right now? I know that you've dabbled in with retics quite a bit over the last 2 years.
Yeah. So, man, I've kept a ton of stuff over the last 20 plus years, right? And since I was a kid even. And now I have actually, I think, the smallest collection I've ever had, but with the coolest stuff I've ever had.
Right.
So like some of the, really big, oh my God things. I have one of two. I had both of them, but I am working with someone so that I don't have both of the only ones in the world in my house. But the blue-eyed leucistic eastern garter snakes.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I was nervous as hell, man, having both of them. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean because one thing happens, both are
yep,
gone.
my AC goes out or heat goes out or they get a little too warm or something. I don't know. And that's it, the whole thing. And then I'm the guy who lost the project for the world all over again.
Right.
So
now we have to go back out and find them.
Yeah, right. And that's no problem there, right?
Right.
So that's pretty cool. And then the exanthic rhino rat, it's rat snake. That male is so cool. I stare at him every day.
Owen over Owen at who's with Morelia Python Radio. He's been talking a lot about rhino rat snakes over the last year, and I'm starting to really dig them.
Oh, dude, they're awesome. I love them. They're the only thing I can say that can be a little bit frustrating is getting the babies going is not a simple task. Like if they don't just come out and start eating rodents and they're good. Yeah. It is a nightmare to get them eating on a regular basis. And then once you get them going, they're fine.
Is it like guppies, worms, frogs?
It's guppies. Usually I try and start with guppies to get them going or something like that. And then it's on to pinky heads. And sometimes you got to kind of assist them a little bit. It's like with little green trees and other little things like that. Sometimes you got to do that kind of stuff. And it's just a little bit of a pain, right. Especially for somebody that doesn't have small hands.
Right. No, it's the most frustrating thing. Yeah. I barely wear gloves anymore because I'm like, this doesn't work.
Yep. And then, but I mean, luckily the last one we hatched, the last head exanthic little baby ate a frozen thawed little red hot pinky.
Perfect.
Right. Like first shot and then didn't again, but did right away. Like gave us some hope. And then it was like 5 feedings of frustration. And then now he's kind of back onto it. So, but yeah, they're a little bit challenging there, but other than that, like they're cool and they're beautiful snakes. And as soon as they see you, they start doing this, like they're in a tree.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It's super cool. And that male is, oh my God, like Schwarzenegger and Batman ice blue. Like
I need to, you know what? Something that I haven't done, I'm actually going to open up Instagram on another tab so that I can pull up your page. But if I do find that post, I'll come back to it. That shows him if you have showed him off. But
yeah. And it's crazy because you can actually under the so we have some special lights I brought in for VivTech, and we're going to bring some more in that you actually can see UVA with it. So when you hit this snake with it, the yellow xanthiform color pigments in the skin actually glow, and you can see where they're missing. It's super cool. It looks like spray paint of yellow on top of the blue.
Okay, like, that's pretty damn cool.
It's awesome.
So as far as monitor goes, what species of monitors are you keeping?
So right now, I actually only have the Mertens female monitor that we got from Mike Stefani. And then I've got a couple groups of spinulosus or spiny neck mangrove monitors. Those are out of Solomon Islands. And then the peacocks. And that's it. I actually have kept a huge variety of Odatria or all the dwarf monitors.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it must have been like 5 years ago, me and Erica kind of just got to the point where like we had all the Australian Odatria. We produced a bunch of them. We liked them. But I found that like a lot of people kept them way too dry, and Husbandry just wasn't really right on them. And I was having a hard time even if I sell these babies, I've got to get somebody to really listen to what I'm saying and not everything else out there. And we were just like, you know what, there's enough people working with them. I kind of had gotten a group of the peacocks or trio. I got a trio as imports and really kind of liked them. And I went, you know what? I think I want to focus on something like this where there's not really many people working with it. Because it was just at the time they were just, and I hate to say this, but like the cheap trash lizard, right. They were, $50. So nobody really paid a lot of attention to them or bred them or did anything. And then I found out that they were doing a population survey on Roddy Island where they come from. and there's two outcomes from that. One, the population is declining and they shut off export and we just don't get them anymore. Or two, everything's fine and they still lower the quota and it's harder to get them anyway.
Yeah.
So it's never good. There's never a good outcome from that. Like they never come back and they're like, wow, there's so many. We should just start getting rid of more. We should do actual work to do anything. It's just always a reaction. So basically, I spent the next couple of years, me and Erica spent the next couple of years we got rid of all of our Australian Odastria, and I bought every single Peacock monitor I could find in the country. So
we can't import them anymore?
We can. But so they don't they're not wild caught anymore. But what it is I believe there's two exporters in Indonesia that have captive groups that they can sell the babies they produce, and that's it. So last year and the year before, I think 5 came in one year and maybe 8 the next year, and that was for the whole year period. And that's babies. That's it. And those are just farm bred.
Okay.
So. Yeah, all 8 of them could have been that clutch.
Yeah, possibly.
But yeah, no, but before they stopped exporting wild caught, and once they did, we kind of got everyone we could, and I think at our peak we had about 24 breeding adults.
Oh wow. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk and go into the breeding aspect of it because, as I was mentioning, I'm going to be getting a pair from you, and we had discussed this like 2 years ago, right? And it seems like I don't know, it just seems like maybe the golden ticket to like consistently get them to go has kind of like been a little slow of a process, but now it looks like you're starting to have a lot more success with them, and so I'll be interested here in a bit to talk about like the learning curves and the changes and things that you've had to do to get them to go, but. Let's jump into these animals real deeply. I always love a good story when we talk about animals that are not worked with very often, or in this case, we'll go into like the subspecies and the hybrids that were out there, and I want to talk a little bit about like how you managed to get your hands and making sure that you're getting pure peacock monitors. But let's first go into natural history, and so let's talk about like where they're from, the ecosystem, like all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, all right. So a whole bunch of cool stuff about Offenburgi, right? So they were first mentioned in scientific literature in 1986, and then in 1999, Robert Sprackland is the one that actually described them.
Okay.
And described them as Varanus offenburgi. Now, before that, they were coming into captivity still, not often, but once in a while, and they would come in as blue spot Timors, Timor monitors. And Timor monitors are Varanus timorensis. They come from Timor Island. They look very similar. They're kind of a whitish to cream and black kind of coloration. They look like the axanthic version of a peacock monitor. If you took all the gorgeous color out of a peacock and just kept like the base colors, that's more what a Timor looks like,
right,
in general. Right. But they also live totally differently. They don't live the same way that the peacocks do, even though they look similar and they come from islands that are similar to each other and near each other. They live totally differently. But no, so everything that was coming in was labeled as blue spot Timors, and back before they were described as a peacock monitor or Offenburgi, you would have people breeding a Timor to a fancier, prettier blue spot Timor. And then once they were described as Offenburgi, now everything that was a blue spot Timor monitor is a hybrid.
Right. And you were talking about the blues. I just kind of want to bring this up here, and I'm sure this picture doesn't even capture it, but yeah, I mean, they're just pretty awesome looking animals.
Yeah, and that's not my big guy. I have a big guy, and I just call him Big Blue. He has no red. He's the only one I have that doesn't have orange or red, and he is sky blue, his whole body. And I just paired him up with a nice big, very blue female. So that should be pretty cool too.
I'm gonna pull up. There's a picture that you have on your social media. I'm gonna pull up, and it's an Offenburgi, right? It's a peacock monitor, and when I saw the size of it, I was like, "Holy shit, that's a pretty big size one." And so I wanna see if that's the one that you're talking about. Man, But anyways, continue going while I
Yeah.
pull up this picture.
Yeah, no. So, all right, where we're at. So they were. So a lot of them are hybrids, right? No. So the animals that I got were coming in between 2016 and about 2020. Actually, before that, even probably 2018. I want to say.
Okay.
Oh, 2019. 2019 is when. Yeah. So 2017 to 2019, I had 2 years. 2 years is how before they stopped exporting them, and then they actually labeled them as an endangered species. So yeah, so all of the ones that we got were wild caught. They were brought straight from Roddy Island. They were sourced there. You can tell the difference when we would key them out, and you could tell a lot of the differences in the color and really the colors, especially being wild caught. So, and that's where we started our foundation, is all wild caught animals. And then all the captive bred ones we have now are ones that we've produced and held back and, paired off.
So you were going into like how they live versus the monitors that are on Timor Island, and like they're like how they are very different in that regard. So what is their natural behavior like? Their environment like? Where are they found on this island, and so forth?
Yeah, so the island that they come from is Roddy Island. So you have Timor Island, and then Roddy Island, and then down from that's Blue.
Yeah, that's a he's a big dude, but yeah, he's gorgeous.
Yeah, he's a big punk. But he's a pretty good animal. He's that's the nice thing too. Like when I say punk, they get all like huffy and puffy, and then they run off.
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna say, like, his neck looks like he's trying to like make you go away, but I bet he just went right back into like his cork.
He just dropped right down into something. Yeah, even if you grab them, like they wiggle and they want to get away. But I've only been bit a few times. And if you ask Erica for the best story of me getting bit by Peacock Monitors, it was because she's digging for eggs in a high up enclosure. It's big 4x2x2. And we had this trio in there. So she hands me one of them, and I'm holding this female, and she starts gaping at me. And as soon as she does that, I have to mess with her because I'm an idiot. So I'm just like poking at her and teasing her and stuff. And she's like, "You're going to get bit. You're going to get bit." I'm like, "It'll be fine." So she goes, "Here's another one." She hands me another one. I grab the male, and I'm sitting there, and I'm not paying attention. And I go like this, and she bites this side of my hand. And I went, "Oh, crap." And I went like this, and he bit this side of my hand. So they handcuffed me together while I was holding him. And I'm yelling for Erica to try and grab one so I can like let it go without it flying across the room. And she is standing on the ladder just laughing at me.
Of course she is.
Yeah, I had to wait until I had to just dangle the male until he dropped, and then I had to grab him.
Oh,
it was a good time.
Fun times.
But no, other than that, they really just kind of run away. But yeah, so they come from, so it goes Timor Island, Roddy Island, and then Savu Island. And then off of Roddy Island is two smaller islands that they're also found on called Inadu and Ndoa. And that's the only places the peacocks are found, that and then Roddy. And when on Roddy Island, there's a ton of palm trees. And they basically they either burrow into the ground or under the rocks and the rubble, debris, things like that. Or they live up into the palm fronds, and they use the palm fronds to run around and kind of like a little highway. Right. But they really don't spend much time in between that. Like, so they'll hunt and wake up in the morning, and then they go all the way up to the palm fronds for the day, and then they come down and they go to sleep. And they have a really specific pattern. Oh yeah, here. So Erica made this for me to go on the Offenberg project thing. But
hi, Erica.
Hi. But yeah, that kind of shows that this is Roddy Island, and I think it's like 14 miles long, something like that. It's not very big. And then these are the tiny little specks of the other two islands, Ndana and Ndoa.
I wonder if there's any major phenotypic expression differences between the three islands.
I don't know, but I am hoping within the next couple of years to get out there. We actually had the plan to do it one year, right? Thankfully, we didn't, because I think it was right when everything in our around us just kind of went crazy. So it was a good thing that we didn't. But no, we're hoping to get out there and do that. And actually, I want to sit on Roddy Island. I want to sit in the leaf litter and crap in like a ghillie suit at like 4 a.m. And I'm just going to sit there with a notebook and all my gear and just sit. And then I'll come back at like midnight. And that's all I want to do is just note stuff and watch and take temperatures and readings. And
I
But
mean, it's a remote island that probably not a lot of people have been to outside the people that live on there.
yeah, so there is on Roddy Island on one side there's one resort and it's known for its surfing.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah.
That's pretty
So
awesome.
yeah, but no, so they're from that island, but they, like I said, they spend most of their time in the palm trees and then down in the ground. And then on Timor's monitors are arboreal, but not. I hate when we say things are arboreal, especially when we come to monitors. Very few monitors outside of tree monitors are actually arboreal.
Yeah.
They utilize trees. They run up a tree like a squirrel so they can get away from predators.
Right.
But they don't live up there.
Yeah.
So and Timor monitors are a lot more like that. Like they'll utilize trees, but they're foraging and digging, and
right. That'd be like calling a croc monitor an arboreal species because you see them up on the tree.
Right. Like, yeah, they utilize the trees, but they're also
right.
all on the ground and they dig burrows and they live in the ground and they do all the normal monitor stuff,
Yeah.
So same thing there versus like, I would say peacocks are more arboreal where they literally spend their times on the top of the palm fronds running around, the island that way.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your retics environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
Cool. Now, as far as like what they're eating in their natural habitat and everything, I mean, the island's not that big. So like how close are they like to the actual ocean? Do you find them more in?
So because the island's not that big, they kind of are found everywhere on it. I've seen photos of them on like towards the beach. I've seen photos of them in like swampier areas in the inland of the island. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of areas where they're not found. Again, I have to go tromp around an island to figure this out for myself, but
right.
Just because I don't know that I think there's only really 2 studies from the island that deal with peacocks at all. And they're obviously limited by,
right.
That trip or those couple trips they take. So
right.
They had a pretty good distribution of where they found them. But yeah, there's areas that weren't traveled and known. But no, so they mostly eat bugs, and there's a lot of dragonflies on the island, crustaceans and things like that. Ours love in captivity. They eat everything. They eat all insects. They eat any kind of fish, shrimp, stuff like that. Yeah, they're pretty easy to feed.
I can get crawfish pretty cheap over here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they would totally rip that apart and love it. Like they're awesome. Like they pretty much, I don't think there's much I've ever given them they didn't eat. Now, granted, if it's like ground turkey, some days they want it, some days they don't.
Right.
But most of the time, the bigger thing is it's a lot more when you feed them of whether they want to eat or not. It's not what it is, it's when you feed them. So all of my animals are incredibly habitual. Like all of them, all 9 cages, wake up at the same time. They can't even see each other. They're on other sides of the room. They all wake up at the same time. They all bask at the same time. They all eat between the same times, and they all go down and stop coming out at the same time.
Interesting.
So yeah, like I'm very curious to see if that translates to their natural habitat and how they utilize their time throughout the day. But it's kind of follows what I would assume I think I'm going to see based on their actions is they wake up in the morning after everything is kind of warmed up a little bit and the insects and stuff are moving. Then they get up and they eat. on the ground and run around and forage and eat before predators are like out. And then they tear up to the top of the trees to bask and hang out all day. And then once it starts to get a little bit towards the end of the day or it gets into the heat of the day, they come back down and then they're kind of out for the day. So if I feed them after 2 p.m., they won't eat it. They won't come out.
Really?
Like maybe half of them. Half of them, if like there's a hungry, they'll smell food and come out. But half of them won't come. They won't. They will not get out of bed for food.
That's
Like once
interesting.
they're down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good to know. And you know, I think it speaks volumes as well when you notice a collection of the same species, different animals imported at different times. And again, a lot of these are imported animals that you're working with, right? I think it shows a lot to your husbandry for the animals that they're on nearly the same exact schedule, right? It seems like,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like if like your light cycles were different or things were not like fully on and like on point, that there would have to be some variation and differences. But yeah, I mean, to me, like I think when people keep enclosures like you do, right, where you have plants that are in there and you build them, right, and they're elaborate and they're beautiful, and you have lighting systems that turn on and turn off with timers and different things, like you can really tell when you are doing things right because the animals behave in a way that like outside of that they just don't.
Yeah, and you see that. Honestly, you see that a lot in like this, like what you see animals do in zoos versus. But honestly, within our own animals, I would say the biggest impact and what changed that. And this is not. I mean, it is the shameless plug, I guess. Whatever. But it was the UVA that our bulbs put out. So UVA is significantly important to how animals utilize or how they metabolize. Man, I'm getting all tripped up. UVA is mental. It's mental health. So how they synthesize or create or dang it, regulate. That's the word. How they regulate serotonin, deal with managing cortisol, oxytocin in gravid females. Oxytocin in gravid females is actually regulated by UVA as well. They see it. It's how they signal to each other. You look at geckos and they talk about scent glands and animals with scent glands. Now monitors like do have scent glands. They rub them all over you that stink, but they also those glands give off like a bright color under the right UVA light. So when those animals are marking their territory, they're actually spray tagging their territory, and you can see it with the right light. So like that light changes how they live their life in so many ways and how they feel. And I think it brings them into a more natural feeling versus, I guess, what you could equate it to like a seasonal depression. And I don't mean like, you know, crying, listening to emo music, but like the sitting down, not wanting to do anything, not wanting to get up and move. Yeah, there you go. Not wanting to like, be like if I'm depressed, I just sit and I'm lethargic. And you know, people who suffer from long-term depression have health issues from that and things like that. So, and you kind of see that in that lethargy in your animals. But once you take them outside and they get that sunlight, or they're under a bulb that has UVA out, a high UVA output, then they start to balance those hormones in their brain and they start to act more natural. And that's when we really started to see a lot more of those more timed behaviors throughout the entire day. Do I have no sound?
No, I had myself muted. That's
there we go.
Dang. Yeah, I was gonna say there's no doubt to the health benefits of providing you know, full spectrum lighting or not full spectrum, but you know, the UVA, the UVB, the visible light, and the you know, the even heated lights, right? You know, I'm starting, the more that I dig into this lighting aspect, fortunately for me, for all my snakes in the lab, it's all ambient. I don't have a single snake that has a hot spot. It's 84 at the high peak during the day. It's 80 degrees at the low peak. And then during winter, still 83, 84, but I let it get down to 74, 75 at night. But if I were to ever go back to keeping on a gradient style for my animals, I think I'm providing their heat source. I'm not getting radiant heat panels. I'm going to be getting bulbs. I just there's something about like when you have heat coming from a light source and you add the other spectrums of what creates the sun. Yeah, there's just like there's no denying that's got to be better for your animals, right? Like, sure, they
Right.
can survive without it, but
Well, and the other thing too, though, is like when we talk about UVA, UVB, UVC, we all have heard those terms. Infrared, the heat also has infrared A, B, things like that. So the heat that a radiant heat panel gives off isn't the same heat wavelength that your animals use to actually metabolize D3 and calcium and things in their body.
Right.
So a halogen bulb gives off, I believe it's IRA that we want more of. And IRA, you get a halogen that puts a lot of that off versus like a radiant heat panel puts off none. It's all B. Right. So you get different behaviors, you get different health things. It's so much changes when you add in those different wavelengths.
Right. So we're talking about a little bit of like husbandry and lighting now. Let's jump into the captive history of these Peacock monitors. I know that we talked a little bit about them, but I know that we've talked outside this episode about the confusion, the hybridization, things that have happened, and why they're like not very common to come across. So take us into kind of like when they were introduced into the hobby, and then take us into that kind of story, and we'll talk a little bit more about their captive husbandry.
Yeah, absolutely. So they started getting exported in 2010 or 2010. So they started getting exported in 2010. That's when we first saw them in the hobby. So, I mean, they were not coming in for a very long time. So, I mean, between 2010 and 2017, 2017 is when the study kicked off and exportation was put on hold. And when it was actually killed, it was in 19 when they finished the study and all the findings. So it was they only came in for 7 years. Now you would see them come in as sometimes most of them would come in as wild caught adults. Sometimes you'd see babies, and they would just be like a lot of other species that came in wild caught, unless somebody get them, they'd like them. Maybe the female would get egg bound or be dehydrated or have kidney issues or liver issues from shipping and dehydration, whatever, and with fail to thrive, you end up with a male, you get rid of it, and they just kind of all fizzle into the hobby, into the ether. And that's kind of what happened with them, is that nobody was really focused on them. Everybody just kind of had a pair or a trio, and nobody really focused on them. So they just kind of all existed, and they were easy. They were at most shows. You could get them multiple times a year. They were imported pretty regularly. And then once that stopped, that there was no safety net. There was no group of them anywhere outside of what we were doing. And to the point where I actually kind of stiff-armed some friends into they had a lone female, and they're like, "Hey, give me one of your males." And I'm like, "No." So, and stiff-armed
your female.
Yeah. Actually got one of my friend's employer to threaten to fire him if he didn't sell it to me. Joking, obviously joking.
That's dedication.
Obviously joking. I knew he would anyway, but I was giving him crap. But no, it was, anything we could do. Anybody that knew about them for sale would contact us. We were picking up every single one we could. But no, so that's kind of what happened and that's what we found. We got a trio from one person, a lone male from one person, a lone female from someone else, and just slowly kind of collected over the years. But that's kind of what happened with them. And then so we already talked about the distribution. So, or the separation of the species. So so there's still, but that's the other thing too, though, is if you didn't get any of those that were wild caught adults, then, and you getting them as captive bred. I actually was at Daytona a few years ago. I was walking around, and I never looked to find peacocks because they just don't exist anywhere. And I was walking around, and I walked past a tank that said, a Timor monitor, and I stopped real quick, and it had a lot of color. Like, that doesn't look right. That looks like a peacock. But then the more I looked at it, I'm like, but it doesn't look right for a peacock either. So I asked him where he got it. He said he bought it from some people he knew. Eventually he was able throughout the weekend to message him and get pictures of the adults. And it was a Peacock monitor and a Timor monitor. So it was a hybrid.
Right. So there was a split in the species at one point, and that kind of created
Well, kind of. It's more that the Peacock monitors were never speciated. Like
Gotcha.
they there's actually another species on Savu Island that looks different than a peacock or a Timor. That could be brought in as a Timor monitor. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a species right now.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
And that's kind of what it was. They were brought, and that's why they just called them like blue spot Timors. They were fancy Timors.
Right. Right. So more as like a, if one wasn't provided a different speciations and everything, but there's a big locality difference. And like retics, most of them were hybridized because no one gave a shit about localities, before the Lacey ban, the Lacey Act ban that happened and stopped importation of the animals. And then everyone at the last minute panicked and was like, let's try to get as many localities as we can.
Right.
And not even everyone. It was like maybe a handful of people. But yeah, okay, interesting. So, you mentioned how many adults do you have?
I should know this number offhand.
No, that's like people ask me how many retics you have, and I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, I know. No, it's
23.
we have. Sorry, I'm 23 adult.
I love that I can hear her so clearly. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah.
I miss you guys.
Yeah. Well, you got once you're back up here, you have to come out and see all the mommies and daddies.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to it. I got a baby due in 2 months, and so it's probably going to be till 2026 where I start doing some reptile trips.
Right.
But yeah, so 23 of them, and let's jump into husbandry, right? Because I think that there's a lot of different monitor species out there, and there are some that probably are kept very similarly to others, and I'm thinking about like this is a small island, a lot of beach. And when I think of monitors, I automatically kind of assume and I go right over to like the dry species, right? You think of Australian monitors, and you think of you think of what are they called? The cute little
Savannahs,
Ackies and Savannahs and all those different type of monitors. So let's break down the captive husbandry of these animals in terms of like temperature parameters, humidity, the foliage, and like what you need to get these animals thriving. And then I'm curious as well if like they compare to another monitor species or how they vastly differ than others.
So there's some big call outs for these, and this is for a lot of species that people don't understand. Monitors drive me nuts. Monitor husbandry drives me nuts. Everybody broad brush strokes monitor husbandry, because if you cook a Asian water monitor to 150 degrees and feed it 10 times what it's supposed to eat, it'll crank out babies. Right. So that's what you should do to all of them, and they all crank out babies. And yes,
right. Because if they reproduce, they're thriving.
Exactly. But and realistically, for almost all monitors, if you give them the places they need to feel safe, a good humidity and good temperatures, and you keep them well fed, they'll just breed. When they feel good and they're doing good, they breed. And it's just knowing how to get that. And it's so when it comes to these guys, the biggest call out with all of them is they don't get to 100 nothing. There might be blacktop on that island, maybe in the worst sunny day in the summer with zero wind, which also doesn't happen there. Maybe the surface of the blacktop hits 150.
How do you spell the name of the island they're from?
Roti.
Okay.
Yeah. The temperature there almost year round, the air temperature is 74 to 84. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, oh geez. Yeah. So right now, just like looking at AI overview on Google right now, it's 25 Celsius to 30 Celsius, which is 77 Fahrenheit to 86 Fahrenheit throughout the entire year.
Yep.
I'm imagining that like at 82 degrees at its highest, right? On a rock, you might hit like 105.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's about it. Like I'm thinking top of a camp, sitting on a palm frond, facing straight up at the sun, you're probably going to get some solid heat if it's 86 out, but No, they're not hitting 150 degrees. They're not hitting over 105.
Yeah.
So a lot of the species like spinulosus are very similar. If you hit them with really high heat, they waste away and die in days. Like their metabolism goes through the roof and they just crash from it. I've helped save so many that came in and had people like, hey, mine's not thriving. And I'm like, what's your temp? Is it above 95? And they're like, oh my God, yeah. I'm like, nope, that's why you're killing it. Just make it cold and it'll catch back up.
Right. It's crazy how, I don't know. Even when I got back into, so I've been keeping snakes my whole life, right? But when I jumped back into like adulthood, right, it was about 6.5 years ago. And even in that short time span, so many species, people are starting to realize, we've been probably, we've been baking them a little too much, right? Like I think that like there's always that assumption back in the 80s, 90s of like, these are cold-blooded animals. So like they need a hot spot, right? I'll say that like when I see my snakes most active in my garage, and this goes for all the species that I keep, and I keep bull snakes. I keep Morelia, both chondros and carpets. I have Pimbora, Sri Lankan pythons. I have retics and an Amazon tree boa. But like when the temperatures are cooler, they are the most active. So I think that it's interesting that like these Peacock monitors, you see it on the island, right? I mean, at 86 degrees being the highest temperature, you probably don't want to give them a 120 degree basking spot.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where this is the other thing that's crazy about this, right? All right, so this is an island. It's tropical. It's equatorial. You'd expect it to be like the Bahamas. It's not. It has the same rainfall as Phoenix, Arizona. They go 4 months with under an inch of rainfall total. It's a barren desert for 4 months with almost no potable water falling from the sky.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading right now that the rainy season is only 3 months.
Yeah, and it's the rainy season is still less rain than I get here in Chicago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm dead serious. It is equivalent to Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, I found finally. So like the average temperatures per month from 1991 to 2020, the highest it ever got on the island was 90 degrees.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yep. So it is the same temperature, the same everything year round.
Yeah. I mean,
other than rainfall. But you still have that same humidity because it's an island. So it's got 50, 60% humidity minimum, but it's not wet ever. It's bone dry.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it looks like January has like it's pretty rainy, but other than that, we're talking about just a few inches a month at most.
Yeah. Yep. So it's tropical, but it's not.
Right.
And it's hot, but it's not. So
what are you?
Yeah, right. So that's where like digging into the actual island's like climate is really important, and realizing how broad stroke husbandry can be really detrimental to a species that is not that far away from where Asian water monitors or Australian monitors or any of those are. But
right.
The husbandry is significantly different. And if you kept these like the same way most people are told to keep a water monitor, you're going to kill it.
I want to share something that I found of just like an aerial view of Rhode Island. And it's gorgeous. Like, let me know when you guys go, please.
Yeah, no, we had it planned. We had a buddy that was going to go with, who's a film producer, and come with and do it. We were going to do a documentary on the islands, and I wanted to find different localities of Timor python because they come from multiples of those islands we were going to go see. So, and then Macklots. I wanted to see some different island Macklots.
I'd love to do that. Do you keep any Macklots or Timors?
I have. So the reason I have a ton of retics is because me and Erica have always loved retics, but I can't do mainlands. I just can't. I can't just. To me, I love everybody that loves them. I don't want to put anybody down, but for me, it's a 20+ foot tree climbing monkey eating arboreal snake. Like, you can't put that in a cage in a way that I feel is is healthy for it.
Right.
So I struggle with that. Well, it would then come in super dwarfs, right? And okay, that's a manageable size for I can give an animal that room to move, keep its musculature, get keep its brain moving, and I give it like an enriching environment, and so we started going down that route, and we got like 1 years ago, and it passed away, and we got another one, and we got like Erica had like this just worst luck ever of getting 3 retics in a row, and one had a brain aneurysm, one died of a heart attack, and the other one we didn't figure out. It just was slithering out of its cage and just stopped and just was dead. Yeah, right.
I don't know why I'm laughing. But
It's
that is
it was just So she didn't touch him. She didn't touch him for years. She didn't want him. She's like, I never want to see another one again. I love him. I can't do it. Well, and then super dwarfs come in, and I'm getting the itch. I'm like, I have to work with these. And of course, then our friend Andrew Acevedo, I did a trade with him. I actually traded him my pair of Maclots because we started talking, and he wanted to work with the species I had, and I wanted to work with a bunch of stuff he had. So we kind of just started trading, and then he basically said, once you're done with all my cool Indo stuff, and we'll just you can sell it back to me.
right.
And then I'll
right.
keep going on my path that I was on. So you're just
Right.
borrowing them for now. But that ended up with us getting a whole bunch of really awesome, super dwarf retics.
So let me ask you, I sent you over a Kayuwadi probably about a year and a half ago. How many retics did you have at that point when I sent you the Kayuwadi? Was that like your second or third?
I feel like he was our second.
Second. I think it was second. That's why I said that. And I'm curious, where are you at now?
The ones that we own.
The ones that are in your house.
The ones that are in our house. 18.
Yep, that you got bit by the bug.
Some of them were animals we took out to shows with us that are going back to home.
Okay, fair.
But no, yeah, we I definitely did, and like I said, I love retics, and so does Erica. We just now they're smaller, and I can work with them, and it's like even a 10-foot super dwarf is smaller than a 10-foot red-tailed boa.
So let me ask you real quick. So the animals that you are taking out to shows right now that are going back to their home, and you don't have to answer this if you don't know if the person, but like, were they Andrew Productions?
Yeah. So I had
Cool.
Andrew had sent me some animals to take out to a couple shows because I was heading out to California last summer and some other big shows. So I've had a couple.
I might hit you up on that.
Yeah, let me know.
I like that idea. I'm here's my goal for 2025. I want to do my first local show. Like I want to do one show, right? But we'll see what production is like, because right now right now if I went to a show, I have like, besides the newest clutch, right, where I'm just now putting out marketing, I only have like 8 snakes available.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems weird to pay for a bunch of money, and obviously with the locality stuff and the super door stuff, going to a show and like your cheapest animal on your table being $1,200, it's like, how many people are going to be walking by? And
we just did a local show this last weekend, and I brought a bunch of them just because, and I had people, like, it was cool because there was a lot of people up there who had never seen an actual super dwarf in person, and I had a couple people get really excited and were like, oh my god, I've never seen one. So that was pretty cool to like have that. But yeah, no, people there are like, I sold my daughter's $40 crested gecko.
No
but
problem.
After that,
yeah, and that's a big reason why I got into the carpet complex, right? Is because if I want to start doing local shows and doing those things, I want my table to have a range.
Yep.
Right. So for carpets, we're talking about like anywhere between like $250 to $300, and I'm only working with like locality specific, no crazy morphs or anything. So up to like $600, right? So you got like $250 to $600, and then I could put my retics on the table, and those right now, I like, cheapest I've ever sold a retic for that I produce was $750, right? So that's like the next step. So
right.
I've always thought it would be silly to just go to a show and have like 8 snakes on a table and they're $1,500.
It makes it a very difficult show to actually like move anything or pay for your show. Or,
Right.
And we kind of do the same. But anytime I'm doing shows, any friends nearby or people, like I'll bring a bunch of stuff from friends along with, and that's part of like the diversity of stuff it shows we end up with. But
Right, exactly. And for me, I think that like even if I did the read, I mean, I could still see some benefit, and I think for me, it's because all the local shows that I have, like I only see one other person that has retics there, and you know I like them, but they're the people that like every show the same clutch that they're selling, and I see them like 3 months apart. The percentage of dwarf and super dwarf changes, right? And it's like really.
yeah.
So I think it would be cool to bring out the animals, have them there, but also like bring some enclosures and have some of the adults, right? And just good size. And so that way you at least get a crowd around you and they can see a retic in person. Cause here locally, there's not, you rarely see retics at shows.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Same up here. I mean, we have one person in locally that generally is at some of the shows with some retics, but that's about it.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back to our species spotlight. We're going to get back into peacocks. I could talk the retic stuff for days. And as a matter of fact, when we're done with the peacocks, I'll probably even pick your brain more about the retics. But
yeah.
All right. Peacock Monitor. So we're talking about captive husbandry. So where are we shooting this hotspot at?
So generally what I like to do is my enclosures for my pairs or trios are generally either 18-18-36 or 2x2 by 3 or 4, depending. I've done 4x2x2s. Yes, they'll climb and they like to be up, but as long as you get them off the ground, they're comfortable. But you could go bigger, whatever. But anyway, so what I do is I put like a cork tube along the back wall and cork with branches and stuff all over, and I've got cork on the walls so that they can hang. And just give them a lot of arboreal spaces to climb and hide. They jam themselves into tubes. That's their favorite thing to do, is get 3 of them smushed into one.
That's the biggest issue that I have right now. I'm setting up the enclosures, right, that I'm getting your pair from, and I can't find cork tubes anywhere, man. If you got a bunch laying around.
I just had a dude locals. Just he's asking a buttload. I should just afterwards we'll talk. I can tell you how to get some cheap and
because
quick.
I literally cheap please, because when I go to shows and I see cork bark tubes, they're like $50 for like something that's 6 inches long, and I'm like, why? It's wood.
You gotta get. Let's see, what would be the next big one? Get to the Dallas one. Pangea's there. They do like fill a bag for $20 with like scraps. That's what you can go grab a bunch of little chunks to stack up. That's awesome for them.
Okay, cool. So you're placing cork bark around there. You're putting some foliage and your areas to climb and everything. And hotspot. You did mention that. What was it?
Yeah. So all right. So I have the lights up in front, like you can kind of see here, and I shoot towards the back. So I do one on the right and one on the left. One's heat, one's UV, and I cross them, and I kind of center them in the back. On a log or against the wall or, on some spot. And I'll move it around just so I can get a good basking spot, but I'll try and shoot for about 95 to 100 degrees.
Okay.
And it's just in that one spot. And then I'll have cork tubes right next to it so they can kind of bask and then duck away when they want to. And then on the ground, you drop a lot of cork, like debris. And I'll even throw leaf litter and stuff down there because they like to, like I said, they either live up top and they're in tubes, or they come down and they burrow and they're underground.
Okay. And so if you don't mind me asking, so you're providing them a 95-degree basking spot. What is the ambient in the room that you are keeping them in? And so I'm guessing like in the enclosure, what's the low temperature range?
So they hit our room sits at about 76 to 78, depending on if I bump the switch or to the time of year. But that's about our room's ambient. Okay,
cool. Yeah, and I know that we talked about like, me keeping my room ambient and having those temp fluctuations and everything. And so, I think you let me know this is a good idea, but I was going to read that basking spot at the hottest time of the day. So when my garage is like 84 degrees, I want to read that basking spot. And I was going to go to maybe like 99, 100 when my ambient in the garage is 84. So that way when it drops down at night and it's 80, well, I mean, it won't even be on, but I imagine that like I don't want to, if my ambient's higher, I don't want to, I definitely don't want a hot spot that's way too hot.
Right. Well, the nice thing is, honestly, man, if you're talking like you're even talking 6 degrees of a temperature swing, that's not going to make that much of a difference. And that kind of a temperature swing is still going to happen in the natural environment too. So,
Right.
If you get, up to 105, you'll be fine.
Right. So now substrate, right? We talked a little bit about, you were helping me set up substrate, and it's a little different than other substrates that I've made. So do you mind going into like what you are using for your substrate and like what works really well for them?
Yeah. So I kind of switched up how we've been doing our substrate for the last couple of years, but we went and got a compost bin, one of those just spinning bins you can put your compost in. And I taped it all up and closed up. There's a lot of holes in those. You gotta be careful. Flings dirt everywhere. But taped them all up. And then in each side, I make a mix. I make a forest mix or a jungle, like more humid mix. And I make a desert or island. I call it island because I don't have anything desert, but island tropical mix. So I do like probably 50 or 60% sand. And I've even had like leftover crushed coral from saltwater tanks that I dumped in there.
That's
and
cool.
Like, just anything that would naturally be there. And then I'll do, peat core or coconut core or whatever, just some sort of peat moss, something like that, that's small and fibrous, that would kind of think like on an island, if you were to go dig in the sand off the beach, up by where the trees are, the further away from the beach you get, the more there's detritus, there's bark, there's leaves breaking down into the sand, and that's the dirt that's there. So when you start to dig into it, you get this really like real light, loamy kind of soil, and that's kind of what I shoot for. So high sand, and then a bunch of peat moss, and then I'll throw in sometimes I'll throw in bark or hardwood bark or even like cypress mulch or something, just to kind of break it up a little bit and aerate it a little bit. I've thrown in carbon before when I had it. I've thrown in.
Are you putting topsoil in there?
Yeah, I'll throw topsoil in once in a while. It kind of depends. With the island mix, I don't put as much topsoil in as I do my more, I guess, jungle-ish or forest mixture. But it's got to be really good topsoil that doesn't clump real hard and actually breaks apart. Otherwise, you just end up with like a really good mix and then a wad of topsoil the size of a softball.
Yeah. So I was, we talked, and I was going to do, it was like 60% sand, 30% cocoa core, 10% topsoil. And then I was also, I'm glad that you mentioned like the aeration aspect. I'm just going to throw, like, I have cocoa chips, right? I was going to throw like probably, I don't know, a couple shovels full, mix it around. So that way there's like, again, you mentioned aeration.
Yeah. I mean, you can throw leaf litter in there and crumble it all up.
I'll put that
That's
too.
Literally what you're doing is actually just composting together and grinding together all of the stuff that essentially is there. If we were to go to Rhode Island, scoop up dirt and break it down, that's the stuff that's in.
That's something that like I genuinely like I appreciate about you and other people in the industry that do that, right? So when I get into a new species, the way that my brain functions like instinctively is to find someone who is keeping these animals and get set specific instructions on how to keep them, and how to do the soil and everything. And then, once I ease up and I don't kill the animal, right? Then I get into that thinking mode where you're at right now with them. It's like, let's pull up Rhode Island. Like let's look at what this is, and let me just like put, like, I remember you were telling me that you guys were doing like you guys were making food for them, right? Like you were pre-making food that had like shrimp in there and other things in there, and you're like, what's going to be on an island? What's going to be there? Like, and you just threw in things, blended them together, and they loved it.
Yeah, we have a salmon head. I put a salmon head through my meat grinder like hole. It was nuts. Like we were just like, what else? Oh, there's an octopus. We have a really awesome market near us. Really, there's an octopus and a crab and like a handful of isopods.
Why not?
Right? It's all healthy.
Yeah.
The sheep liver. Let's just throw some of this in there. And we did salmon belly. Just tons of stuff like that. Any shrimp, like anything you can give them. I mean, they're gonna find that around the island, like fish die.
And they like that mix that you were making them. They were eating. They enjoyed it.
God, yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, that's cool because That's my goal. Is I want to be able to like make something where I can make it in mass, freeze it, right, and then just like have their nutritional, they cover like what they need, and just like always have some in my freezer.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and that's kind of why we have it. Like, we rotate so much stuff. We will get shrimp, and I'll, like, get shrimp for the family, and I'll just cut up a bunch for them. And then I'll grab a small tube of like really lean ground turkey. All the monitors will get that one day, and then the next day all the peacocks get crickets, and then they'll get roaches, and then they get the fish diet, and then they get frog legs. We'll pick up frog legs and cut up chunks and let them eat it. Like it just kind of anything you can give them, anything that's insect or crustacean or fish or quail, small quail. They love quail. But yeah,
I got a bunch. I always have at least like 50 to 100-day-old quail in my freezer.
Oh yeah, they go nuts for that. Once they're adults, and they
right, I'm sure they'll swallow them easy.
Yeah.
So I want to get into. We'll eventually get into like their like how to, I guess, in captivity, how to feed them at the different phases of their life. But I'm curious real quick. So we talked about temperature, and now let's hone in on humidity. So what do you, ambient humidity, like what do you think is like sufficient for them to thrive in? Is it like in that tropical, like your 50 to 70% range? Pretty straightforward.
It's I mean, really, if you think about it, it's between 40 and 90, and
okay.
Yeah, and honestly, I keep them drier. I can add moisture rather than pull it away a lot easier. So a lot of my enclosures, the soil is pretty dry, and then my misting system blasts against a wall. So the back corner in that wall has a bunch of moisture that's soaked down into the corner there. And that way, if they decide to breed and lay eggs, and I see digging, I know that they're going to lay them back there because there's humidity and moisture. And then there's moisture around the water bowl. I'll even dump the water bowls sometimes around it just to kind of have a spot. But majority of it's kind of dry. And then the misting system will get everything wet during the day, but it dries up pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't keep them really wet. And like I said, for 4 months, they almost don't see rain.
So they are getting misted daily though.
Yeah, they're on my system that runs everything, and we do mist them daily. Every single mister head though that I have is a different size, so I size my misters for the cages, and all of their mister heads are at. If I was doing a tropical gecko in that enclosure, I'd have a number 5 head. They all have number 2s, okay. So it's a very, very small, fine mist.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
I mean, honestly, as long as you have access to water, they could never get misted as long as the soil had some humidity.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it comes to like, humidity 40 to 90, they're going to be good in that. Let's talk a little bit about like I guess let's go through like their feeding regimen. I guess like when they're born or when they hatch, what are they primarily eating, and when do you start to switch them over into the shrimp, the turkey, all that good stuff?
We start them off eating exactly what the adults eat, just tinier pieces.
Okay. So
yeah, right off the bat, they get a tiny little crested gecko diet bowl size thing of turkey or of the fish mash, or of tiny little diced up, minced up chunks of clam or shrimp or whatever. And then of course crickets. And that whole, like, you got to feed the cricket the size between their eyes. The monitors don't work like that. They work like, if I can tackle it and within an hour get it shoved down my throat, it's small enough, including their siblings. So like, I feed them large crickets the second they're born.
Okay, cool. And you were kind of telling me right now, like where the animals that I'm getting, they're still pretty young. They were born November of 2024. Yep. And you were saying you just kind of throw crickets in there and they're kind of like good.
Yeah. So I watch them. I don't really feed. I know there's people, and I know that there's some people who really stick, like they like a schedule and they like regular. They would hate my life. They would.
No, that's not me. That I got way too much going on to be like.
Oh yeah,
like,
I'm not. No, I'm not. I mean, yeah, I know there's people who are like, I get asked all the time, like, when do you feed? How do you feed? And I'm like, when I go in there and I haven't seen any crickets for a bit, and then I look up there and he's like, doesn't have a big old fat belly. I'm like, oh, more crickets. And then I throw in 5 times what he needs because they'll hide and they'll find them.
Right.
So that's it. Like, and then like if I go feed everybody else some kind of mashed up diet or something, then I look in there's no crickets. I throw food in there. I come back, there's 15 crickets eating the thing I just put in there. I know they're probably not going to eat much of it, but
right.
I don't really plan. I just kind of take a look at their body weight, and when they're out basking, every time I get eyes on one, I look at their belly, I look at their tail base, I kind of look at, how do they look? And then if I need to feed more often, I'll tell Erica we'll up the feedings or we'll add more food, or a more varied diet, or we'll focus on a specific animal if we have to, but otherwise everybody just kind of gets the chaos of when we remember and when they look like they need it.
Yeah, you're what you're telling me right now is I can see a lot of pictures coming your way. On this look a little too chunky, or right?
Yeah. So this is how you look at this. I'm gonna teach you how to look at the tail base of any lizard. Any lizard. You're looking at the hips, and then from where the legs connect to the tail, and the tail goes down. Very few lizards, except like leopard geckos, does their tail bulb out from the tail base. Almost every single one, including males, the tail comes straight off the back.
Okay.
The 90-degree at the tail to the legs. So that's one. That's about how it should be. If it starts to swoop in, or if you start to see vertebrae, or it gets real skinny, you'll know if it's skinny.
Right.
How you know if it's fat is if it's not straight. If it starts to really bulb out, then they're holding fat in their tail. That's bad. And then the other one is their hips. So you want to be able to see their hips. Now, you don't want them to spike out of their back like this, but you want to be able to look at their back hips and see their hips. So
right.
If the whole back is just smooth across the back, then you're looking at something that's a little chunky.
Good to know. I'm pulling up just like as we're going through the episode, I'm wanting to just kind of pull up different examples of how these babies and how the adults look. What's really cool about them is they come in this really manageable, fun size, but they still have the monitor facial structure of like the water monitors, right? Or like they have that like classic monitor look. Whereas I'm not hating on Ackies, right? Ackies are beautiful. They're great monitors. But they just don't have that like they don't have that like cool water monitor face. They don't, right?
Yeah, they've got a little bit more blocked head.
Right. So yeah, I mean, these guys are freaking adorable.
And I love that you say manageable size, because what people can't realize or don't realize by this picture is that is the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than a hatchling crested gecko.
Oh, geez, dude.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to unbox these animals when you send them to me, and I'm going to like be mind blown.
You are, because I could put them in a 2-ounce little condiment cup. Like, they're not big.
Oh my god!
And they've grown a ton. Like these, they really are tiny. I kept 6 of them in an 8 by 10 by 15 enclosure, and they had tons of room.
So yeah, they do hatch out small. I'm curious. Yeah. I'm wondering. You need to send me pictures over of like the eggs. You said you had some incubating right now.
Oh yeah, yep. I've got Erica just pulled out 8, and one of them I'm unsure of, but the other ones look good.
Okay, cool. All right. So we talked about feeding a little bit and their diet. We've talked about like their temperature, their humidity. Anything else that you can think of from the husbandry standpoint that like you can that's noteworthy in regards to what you've learned over the years of keeping these animals?
They are shy. They're super shy. Yes, you can work with them to become less shy. I've got a couple of them that'll come out and eat from tongs from me. I still have to go approach them very slowly, very cautiously, very calmly. They're incredibly shy, flighty little lizards. But so when you come in to see them, like when I walk in my reptile facility, I hear them duck. Like I hear all of that entire cage system go, yep, and they all drop. If I come in quietly, I can like peek my head around where they can see me on the PVC and like try and get eyes on them. And if I latch eyes with them and they see me, they won't move. But if they hear me before I get there, they'll take off.
Yeah.
So, so like, be cautious around them. To expect them to take off when they see you. It's not unusual that they're a little secretive. But that also means like, if you haven't seen them for a couple days, don't freak out. But once in a while, like if I don't see them for more than like 3 days, 4 days, I want to get in there and get eyes on them and make sure like, they're not like for my groups, maybe one female's getting picked on, and that happens once in a while, and she'll kind of just get real skinny and start to hide. And like, it's kind of hard to catch it because if you have 20 animals and these 3 in here look very similar and you see them out all the time, sometimes you don't realize it's 2 you're seeing all the time, not 3.
Right.
So getting eyes on them is a good thing, especially with an animal that's shy. But other than that and the feeding thing, like feed between 10 and 2. That's like it.
10 and 2. That's going to be hard with a 9 to 5 job, dude. How do I do that?
Well, the crickets will help. And then before you leave in the morning, just throw something in there. As long as it's in there when they wake up, you'll be all right.
Yeah, and it'll still be good by the time that they wake up.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. And you know what? Here's the thing: is like I like hearing that they are shy, right? And the reason why I like hearing that is because I'm going to be honest. With my full-time job, with the reptiles, the snakes, everything that I'm doing, I don't have, this isn't like a species, like a water monitor, right? If you're going to keep it, you need to dedicate a crap ton, like a lot of time, to make sure that this animal is not going to see you as enemy number 1, right? For my lifestyle, like having an animal that's a little more shy, that's a little more reclusive, is good for me, right? A lot of other people that like what they like about the monitor aspect is like that socialization aspect, right? They like,
the guy with the big black throat laying on the couch.
Right.
Yep.
It's so cool. And don't get me wrong, I love that too. But I'm not going to buy a black throat. I'm not going to buy a water monitor or a croc monitor because I don't have the time to really dedicate to them. And so, I already got a specific camera that I'm going to be pointing at these guys. I'll enjoy them naturally, let them do their thing. I'm going to do my best to get them tongue fed, to get them to crawl up my arms, right? Like still do that. But it's one of those animals that, I'm maybe curious what your thoughts are. When we're 4 or 5 generations removed from the wild, do you think that these animals have the potential to be a more outgoing species?
I think any can really. I mean, I've seen F8 green tree monitors. Like you just pet them through on their belly, they don't care.
Right.
But at the same time, like they also have been grown out of the egg to that point like that. So
right.
That also makes a difference. So like in clutches I've had where like I had one, like I would work with them, the babies, I would tongue feed when I could. I would, have them come out onto my hand and like put the food out here so they'd have to walk onto my hand to get it and then run back in. Do those little things and work with them. And they're not like so scared they can't do that. And if I stuck with that, totally within a year. And the nice thing is I think if you got them there by the time they're like 1 or 2, I don't think they'd lose it.
Right.
Right. So like, and that's kind of how they are. Like the ones that are really flighty are just flighty, and I haven't worked with them, and I don't have an interest really to, because I let them do their thing.
Right.
And then some of the ones that I know I can kind of mess with, like I will, if I'm in there and she comes out, I'll grab a cricket or something and let her come out, or like whatever. But like, I'm not in there digging for them to play, I'm not trying to hang out every day.
Right. I mean, look at that face. How do you not like that?
Those toes are human hairs.
Oh my gosh.
I said, some of the pictures
so tiny.
Adler next to, I think, a razor blade. Yeah, that's not a hatchling.
That's not a hatchling?
No, that thing's got to be 3 months. So that's about the size of yours right now.
Cool. That makes me very excited. I'm hoping that like March comes, they're here. Yeah, once the weather gets a little more stable and you can send them out, I'm probably about only, I don't know, 10, 14 days away from like hitting their enclosures in husbandry, and I'm ready when you are.
Oh, I can ship them any temperatures. I've never had a problem, and I've shipped stuff from California to Wisconsin when it was -8. I had to get them home.
Yeah.
So
No, I
at
mean,
least,
you got to do what you got to do.
yeah.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood, haven't had any issues myself.
But yeah, no. Once you're ready, hey, we'll get them down there, man.
That's exciting, man. Okay. So, you know, so I guess like and this is more for me, right? But like if I did want to work with these animals and their behavior, right? And I wanted to get them tongue fed and everything, like you're telling me like I'm gonna be getting these animals. They're gonna be, I don't know, November, December, January, February, March, 4 months old. They're gonna be little babies.
Yep.
What do I need to do? What do people need to do that are getting these young peacock monitors to I guess like, again, don't expect a best friend, but get them socialized and accustomed to tongue feeding, those things. Like what's best practice in terms of like how would you go about doing that?
Treat them like a very scared, very sick little dog. Like you found a sick dog on the side of the road and you need to gain its trust to try and get it help.
Okay.
That's how you treat them. So you can't, with monitors and especially these guys, you can't force them to love you or to want to interact with you. The more you go at them, the more you're a big, huge, naked ape predator thing, and they're freaking out.
Right.
So you don't want every interaction to be chaos and cortisol and stress and freaking out. Granted, that's kind of their MO for some of their how they are, but you alleviate that by slow interaction. So like I would sit down at the cage and open it up and put my hand right against the front opening cage glass door, and I would just sit there with like a cricket on a tong, and I would just sit there and wait for one to see it and then pull it out onto my hand. And then he wouldn't do it, and I'd get closer, and then he would try to bite it, and I'd pull it out a little, and you just sit there and then he'd fly off my hand and take off, and I'd chase him around the house and then catch it and then put it back, and but but like it's those small steps, those small little, just if he doesn't want to come around and it's just freaking out in its tube, just leave him alone and try again next time, and then just try and entice him out, and always be calm and trying to pull them to you without like lure them to you in that like calm, kind of way. And they pick up on that. They'll start to learn like, okay, you're not a threat. I can hang out on your hand. And I got one of the babies, I got to the point where I could take a little cricket and he'd come right out of my hand,
That's
eat the
awesome.
cricket, sit there and chomp it down. Then he'd go back in.
And if I scurry back in,
come right back out and jump on my hand again. And he was that big, so it was even cooler because they're monitors, man. They're still smart, they're still incredibly intelligent.
Yeah,
they're just tiny.
That's so wild. And good signs, right? That on a first generation captive bred, and some of these babies are still able to have that confidence and be able to do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that like just really like to eat.
Yeah. Well, and then real quickly you find out who the strongest ones are as they start getting fatter, and then you go in one day and there's like a one halfway down its throat, and you've got yeah. So that's why I was going to be about the age where I wouldn't grow them up together yet.
Right. Let's talk about cohabitation real quick. And like, there's a lot of monitor species where people will house 1.2 together, those kind of things. Can you explain from the time that these animals hatch to the time that they're adults and in breeding, breeding sexual maturity, what's generally the best safe practice in order to keep these individuals without running the risk of them hurting each other or killing each other?
So generally they're not cannibalistic. So you're not really worrying about that in general. I've never had an adult other than Big Blue, who is massive, tried to eat a girl once, but she was too small. I tried something, it went wrong. But geez. Other than that, that was the only time, and she made it. I got him apart, and he was, he didn't eat her. But that was the only time that ever happened. It was a pretty significant size difference. Other than that, babies can. I've raised babies in a group probably till about 3-4 months max. Once they get about this size, then I'm like, okay, you can kind of probably eat each other if you wanted to now. And they're a little bit more aggressive. And you'll start to see too, if you keep them together much past 3 months, you'll start to see who the dominant ones are and who the least dominant or the weakest ones are. And then you risk losing a baby because it got picked on and you've got 6 of them running around. So you're not seeing which one is never coming out. Again, when you've got 6, 8 animals in a cage, you're not going to notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're just going to notice they're always out. And that's got to be something that you watch. Once out of like 4 months, I separate them. And then I don't put them back together until I'm ready to breed them, which usually I want to get them to about 2 years old before I introduce them. I kind of just look at them and figure out, are they based on size and age, and I really don't do weights or anything like that. It's more age and size. Females will be, 2.5 to 3 years old. Males will be, probably about 2 to 3 before they start really getting excited. You can get them to adult size way faster than that. I take it slow and easy.
So when you say you're not bringing them back together until they're ready to breed, at that point, are you housing them together, or is it just to do introductions?
No. So once I'm ready, I just kind of throw them in the same cage and stick a bunch of decor from both of their enclosures together, mix all their scents around, and then I stick them together and just watch. And most of the time, they might bite each other. They might kind of, do some little dominance shuffle. Usually nothing happens. They hide and then they just are cool with each other. And that's kind of how it usually goes. I've had a few where, like I said, I've had a few bite each other, have a little dominance, scuffle and, tear an arm or something a little bit. Nothing that was major, just small stuff. But no, and then once they're together, I don't separate them. I have over time, depending on the groups, I've shifted around animals for, changing up bloodlines and breeding and things like that. And I don't think I've ever had an issue with an animal having another problem, except females. Females, sometimes if you do a trio, you'll get one that's dominant. And then again, once you have a dominant animal and a subordinate animal, sometimes it's okay. And a lot of times it's not. Females tend to be really aggressive towards each other if they go that way. But I've got other ones that have been in a trio for over 5 years and they're fine.
So generally speaking, just pairs are probably the best way to go.
Yeah, pair. I mean, like I said, I've got trios, I've got pairs. They all generally seem good. It's just with the trios, pay attention. Like pairs, you're usually fine, but that's not always the case either. I've got a female right now that's in her own enclosure, kind of recovering. I thought she laid eggs because she came out and looked really thin, and then she didn't realize that she was really thin, and the male was just being really aggressive and eating all the food and not giving her any time to get out and get food and get water. So we put her in a different enclosure. She's chowing food and putting weight and stuff back on, which is awesome. But you got to watch for that stuff because that can happen. It can happen in a pair. It can happen between females in a trio. You just got to kind of keep an eye on it.
And I'm assuming that's a thing that's generalized to most monitor species.
Yeah, exactly. Like even my spinulosus that are paired together, like I have to watch the female. The pair, I have to watch my female. The male is he's one of the only captive bred males. He's the captive bred biggest jerk I have. Did nothing to make him any friendlier, but like he's just dominant. He eats everything. He pushes her around. So I got to make sure she's getting food. So I'll go in there and I'll give him his food on the other side. And then I'll like sit there with her, and she's a sweetheart. That's the only spinulosus I've ever had that I can handle and like interact with. And I can pet her while she's eating. She doesn't even bite me. But I'll give her a cup and she'll come out and eat. And like I'll smack him away and keep him away from her if she's not getting a big belly. But then the spinulosus, the reverse trio I have, I got to watch the males sometimes. I've had other trios where the females will beat each other. It's all. I think it's really all animals you pair up. Even geckos can be like that. If you've got a trio and then all of a sudden one female is not the dominant one anymore.
Right. This is this is just perspective on I'm about to embark on a whole different journey, being that I've kept the only other lizard monitor, whatever species I kept is I helped my niece when she was like 8 or 9 and I was like 16, 17, set up a crested gecko. That's about my lizard experience, right? Keeping a crested gecko. But yeah, I'm excited for this.
Dude, retics are sharp. Like they're smart,
they are.
But this is the socialization and the thinking, and you're entering a whole new world.
Oh, I can't wait. And that's really what draws me to them. And again, like the Peacock Monitors. So I'm someone who really enjoys the rarity of things. I'm someone who enjoys uniqueness and things that are, and you know me, locality based, right? Like I like Lab Exotics is all about bringing the wild into your home, right? Like that's exactly what like I try to brand. Um, and so being able to do it with a species of monitor that's not popularized, that's not common, and then just getting that experience to get the monitor intelligence, but also with an animal that I know that like they're going to be okay. They're going to be better off with less interaction from me.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have to worry about, again, with some of the larger monitors or even with tree monitors, right? Like, I don't know. I can't imagine a world of having a tree monitor that hates me. I wouldn't want that.
Right.
But if these Peacock monitors don't want anything to do with me, it's okay, right? Because yeah, as far as like my lifestyle goes, I think it's a good fit.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of nice to like they're fine. You don't even have to exist as long as they have food and water. They're doing their own thing. Now, if you want to, and I take them out every once in a while, get eyes on them, get to check them all out and enjoy how unreal cool colors they are and pretty they are. So it's not like you never get to interact with them, and they're out once in a while. And then like you put them back and they do their thing and they don't care that you exist.
Right.
It's kind of nice.
Exactly. It's you get the monitor experience without having to have the again, I man, kudos to people that like Mark who owns and does jungle cages, and the work that he does with his croc monitors, like holy shit. Like to be able to just like reach your hand in and give a croc monitor like pet rubs while right after pet rubs, like eating off of tongues and then petting it again, like that is the pinnacle of like keeping reptiles in general. But I just like that's a whole different level of time.
Yep.
And that's like something that people that don't have children get to do. Right.
That's what I had a Tegu like that. I got him. He dropped off at a pet store I worked at. Meanest thing on the planet. Spent every waking hour working with him for years to get him to be like the friendliest thing on the planet. Haven't had another animal like that since, because I haven't had time since I was in college without kids or a family or
Right. Exactly. I'm going to pull up another picture that I see of two of them that are hanging out together, but they are just like so cool looking.
That's three of the babies. They are I think they're in a 12 by 12 by 18 cage right now in that
Awesome.
picture. Yeah. I mean, and they're tiny. Like they're so, man, I'm telling you, it's going to be so funny when you open up. They're so small.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And what's cool is like I am next level excited for these guys. My employees, Sean and James, man, when I told them that like you produced them and that we were gonna get some, like they like dove in and they started looking at like different. They're like, why can't I find information? I was like, exactly.
I'll send you the 4 articles that have ever been written.
Yeah, exactly. And even today, like I'm gonna after this episode, I'm gonna go into the garage and I'm gonna examine. I had them. I was like, hey, I had my daughter by myself, and so I go in the garage. And I'm like, hey, 60% sand, 30% cocoa. Like they did the mix, right? So I'm gonna go in, check the mix out. But they're just as excited as I am.
Oh, awesome! No, I can't wait to see you get them and set them up. They're, like I said, you're never gonna see them, and then you're gonna come in and you're just gonna hear "toot" from across the room and go, "Oh, that was my chance," and turn around and try again in another half hour.
Right. I don't want to spend too much time on this before we wrap up, but I do want to talk a little bit about like breeding them in captivity. And rather than me asking a bunch of questions, I'm just gonna kind of give you the floor and to kind of just like explain what's working for you. And it just only thing that I ask is like you hit on like if there are temperature differences or if there's anything that you're doing that gets them to cycle, to breed and get ready.
right? So here's kind of what I found. So the last couple of years, one of the reason so I've produced them probably 5 different years. The last two, or not, man, 4 years, either way. The last two I hadn't because just the chaos and us and what's been happening in our life and just the insanity. And that was a little bit of it. The majority of why we weren't producing a lot. But what it really comes down to is, like I said in the, we've talked about temperatures. There is no temperature change. There is no temperature seasonality to Roddy Island. There's not.
Yeah.
So changing temperatures wouldn't do anything. I mean, maybe it'd slow them down. They'd stop eating as much, I guess, but that doesn't do anything. So you could do the rainfall cycle, but I don't really think that that's a real big thing either. What it is the same thing you probably do with your retics and most Indonesian species. You food cycle them.
Yep. You increase food.
Yep. So, and realistically for these guys, if you have a relatively decent humidity, you've got at least an area where the substrate is, the room temperature for you is perfect. Some moisture in a corner or underneath a piece of cork is always pretty moist, even if the rest of it's dry, and they're fed, and that's about it. If you hit the wet spot in the dirt and the right temperature, and they have a light cycle, and you feed them,
okay,
they'll give you eggs.
So light cycling. Let's talk about that. Are you doing?
I just mean it turns on, it turns off.
Okay, 12, so 12.
Yep. Even even if you look at that where they're at, I'm telling you, man, that island just does this on every graph, except rainfall.
Yeah,
that's it. It's, I mean, when you're talking, UV indexes, when you're talking, day, sunrise, sunset, it's very little change year round.
Cool. I think it's just more of it's as I get into a whole different ball game of monitors, is just learning those behaviors, which is why I'm really grateful that I'm getting a really young animals, because I'll be able to grow with them and observe those differences and those changes. But from your perspective, I know that monitors can have eggs multiple times throughout the year and everything. Let's just specify it with these Peacock monitors. What is their capabilities as far as how many eggs are they having per clutch, and how often are they capable of doing it? And then can you go into how long incubation temps, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So let's see. So clutch size, generally you're looking probably from 5 to 10. 10 would be a big clutch. The last one we got was 8. The one before that was 5. I usually expect 5 or 6. And then incubation. So we incubate at 84 degrees, and they incubate for, I want to say, around 100 to 120 days, depending. And then, you just hatch out tiny, tiny little monitors. We do them on I do a perlite turfus mixture. So it's crushed terracotta and perlite mixed together. I like that because the terracotta gives you a visual. When I look in there, I can tell if it's dry or wet. And then the perlite, so perlite under a microscope is kind of like a chunk of coarse, grainy, sponge, hard sponge almost. And what that does is it absorbs all of this moisture, but then it keeps the egg elevated from touching anything. So it's not laying against it. So it's got this constant airflow, and that's why I like to use that. It keeps the substrate from packing onto it.
Yeah, my perlite has always been my go-to because it's a lot more aerated and there's a lot more gas exchange than there is with vermiculite.
Also, funny story about vermiculite, I was a certified asbestos inspector. Anytime I find vermiculite, when it's used in construction for insulation, which is what it's used for, there's asbestos in it. So if you're using vermiculite to hatch your animals, the first thing they breathe is a big old wad of asbestos.
Yeah, that's what they need to survive, right?
Right? Little mesothelioma never hurt anybody except
exactly. We love a good asbestos, but geez. The hard. I'm glad you said 100 to 120 days for these animals to incubate. What temp did you say?
84.
84. Okay, so I can deal with 100, right? I now that I've been breeding retics for 6 years, the 85 day for me is set and forget, right? Obviously, if I'm able to produce a clutch of these monitors, I'll be looking at them every single day. But man, I've heard of monitor species that take 150 to 200 days, and so me hearing 100 to 120, I'm like, okay. I mean, 120,
Yeah.
that's still long as hell. But
Yeah, these guys aren't nearly as bad as some of the other species. It's actually a pretty quick catching monitor.
right. And okay, cool. Like that seems pretty straightforward. And I don't know. You made reading sound way too easy. I'll see how that goes.
No, I mean, I really do think with most varanids, that's really what it is. It's and sometimes when you get into bigger stuff, it's how do you in a giant enclosure hit those parameters
Replicate,
accurately? Right. How do you or consistently, and so that's some of it. And then with new species, it's everybody's nervous about where do they come from, what are they eating, what's seasonal. And we have this idea that everything has to be tracked and weather and yes, but not all areas of the world react like that. Like this island, Roddy Island, that just basically doesn't have climate. It just is the same.
Right.
There's no seasons.
That's interesting.
So, but so just
Yeah.
Yeah. Get my brain trailed off for a minute. That's the end of the night.
Right. No, I mean, I'm going to be honest. When it comes to a species that not a lot of people are breeding, that's the response. It's like it works. Whatever.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I really do think though that it's almost all varanids. Like he talks like Mike Stefani and those guys that are breeding these awesome species. It's get them comfortable, hit their basic husbandry needs, and keep them fed and calm, and they're gonna breed.
Right. Yeah. So don't bother them.
Yeah. Like if you're in there all the time messing with them, messing with their habitat, like it's maybe some animals will handle that well if they're really well acclimated to being handled all the time. But even animals like that, if you really want them to breed, you got to leave them alone. Like I've got kids. If I want some time, sucks when they're around bugging me all the time. I don't really get that.
No, exactly.
Moment,
Exactly.
So it's kind of this. Don't be the kids to your animals. Let them have their alone time.
No, I mean, and that's a cool thing, especially when you're providing awesome, enriched natural enclosures with lighting in there like that. That's just, I don't know. It's the way to do it. But fortunately for my setup, right, and like what I do with my day job and everything, the time that I'm going to be working is when their lights are already off, right? So they're literally, if I put food in the morning, right, after I put food in the morning at like 7:30 before I go to work, they're not going to hear the garage door open until 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So they have all day to do whatever the hell that they want, and then the lights are going to go off, and then I'll be in the garage with the overhead light on, right? Not their enclosure light on, doing the retic stuff, and that's about it.
Yep. And that's like I'm telling you, man, if you could FaceTime me at like 6 o'clock, I'll walk in there and show you every cage in real time. They will all be empty. There won't be one lizard out.
Yeah, I love that. That's cool. Because ideally, I want them to do what they are going to do in the wild.
Well, that's what I love about the enclosures and the lighting and all the stuff you're talking about and setting them up like that. Because the whole point is, like you said, bring nature into your house. Well,
right.
If you're excluding out their real environment and interactions and enrichment and the light that causes their hormones and their brain to work, like, are you really looking at what they're naturally doing, or are you just looking at an existing thing?
Right. Exactly. Fun fact, I still, I don't know if you remember. So I did, I have a focus cube enclosure that has a big type volt in there. And so, my female Halmahera that I put in there and notice all these positive behavioral changes, I just upgraded her an enclosure. And so I stuck my holdback female Solaire, who was in a rack, into this focus cube that has UVB, UVA lighting. And, I look at the camera, I look at her, she's basking under it at times. She's cryptic basking. She's out and about, and just, it's really cool to see how they interact with lighting, with their enclosure. And I agree with you. Like you said with the retics, mainlands, man, they need more than anyone is providing them. And I'm not saying that to like, I understand that there is an industry standard, right? And I will say this, like a lot of people that I know and I talk to, they are great people. They care about their animals. And yes, they're keeping their mainland retics in smaller enclosures that like is ideal for them. But yeah, it's just something for me where like I have one Sula female. She's only 2 years old, right? So she's going to get big. I plan to do big things for her enclosure. And that's why like with the mainland localities, I'll probably only deal with Sula and Bali.
Oh yeah.
It's just
I'll just say no to a Bali.
oh man, they're my favorite locality. And as a matter of fact, thank goodness I have someone. Oh man, see, I want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon. There is someone in our Patreon that ended up getting he's been trying to collect different localities, and he managed to get his hands on a pair of Noda How, but also a pair of Bali's that are unrelated that Wolfgang produced. So he's got unrelated and related that he can line breed and crossbreed to help diversify, because Bali is a dying locality in this country. It's almost gone. So
I feel like I might know who you're talking about.
it's Mayray Exotics.
Oh no, different person.
Yeah.
I know somebody else with Bali's then.
Morph King?
Mm-mm.
No. I mean, I also know that Nick Mutton has a pair of Bali's that
Oh no, this is someone who is not in the spotlight of the industry at all. That's some of the fun random people I know where I'm like, hey, I know a guy that has that. No one knows him.
So what's cool is that a lot of people don't know this. Like when it comes to retic localities, there is a guy who just has a lot of money. I think he was a pilot. And he probably has the largest collection of Madus in the country. The guy used to fly over to these countries and make sure that the people who were exporting them were getting them from specific areas. Me and Rodney have been talking about. Rodney has tried getting this guy to like sell a couple, whatever the case may be. Like, nope, he's not budging. He's just got a lot of money. He's not even breeding them, but he's got like 5 or 6 Madu animals.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and no one knows about them.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of stuff like that out there. There's so many crazy animals out there in the U.S. that people don't know even exist.
Yeah, the garage finds are the best finds.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. Let's wrap up. I really appreciate you diving into Peacock Monitors. I get excited every time I get new animals in, but like this is a whole different ball game, and I'm really, really excited for it.
Oh, dude, I'm glad we finally were able to produce some. It's been a crazy couple of years. And like a little coyote I've got from you. He's gonna be. I was like, oh my god, he's gonna be breeding before you.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest. You could have hit me up a year ago, and I would have been like, "Can you hold on to them?" Like you hit me up at the right time where I was like, awesome. Okay, I could do this. But yeah, I was thinking in the back of my mind for a year and a half now. I was like, if he's ready right now, like, am I ready? So I'm ready now, just at the right time that you're ready. And yeah, I'm excited.
No, like I said, I'm excited for you to get them. There's something that like I love being able to like when I let a pair go or I let a couple babies go, like going to the right people who really get excited about what this little Indo dirt lizard that nobody cared about on every importer's table was, and now I sold Peacock monitors for more than Kimberly Rock monitors in my hobby and in time the time I've been in this industry. That's the craziest thing I've ever said.
Yeah, never in a million years would someone think that. I mean, $75 off of a table in 2010.
Yeah, and now I sell babies when I let them go for $1,250 a piece to $1,000 a piece.
Yeah, don't sell any. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't sell a whole lot.
Yeah. I'm excited for the real quick. Actually, before we finish up, can you explain a little bit of the phenotypic differences that you're working with and what you're looking to try to focus on? Because you talked about getting eggs from a high red pair.
Yeah, so they have so much diversity within the colors that they have, which is another thing too. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, but take a look at their colors really up close. The colors of the Peacock monitors, they're the exact same colors Komodo dragons have. It's the same color palette as Komodo dragons, which is super rad.
Yeah, that's cool as hell.
Yeah, see, and then I just got really excited about that. What was I going to answer?
We're going to talk about the different phenotypic expressions.
Oh, right. So some of them just
Komodo dragons.
Yeah, right. Oh, but it's like some of them are some of them have more red, some of them have more blue, some of them are kind of a good balance. So I realized over the 20 something animals that we had, like, okay, you three have a lot more red. This one's more blue, and I just kind of sectioned them off like that. Here and there, and I'll move them around. They don't all stay like that, but and I ID'd all of them, so we know who is. You could throw them all in a bin, and I know exactly who each one is. No, so so we've got a blue group right now, a high red group, a high yellow group, and then we've got 4 standard groups.
Okay, cool.
Which are just nothing. They're just not high red. They're kind of in the middle, or they, maybe they're a little more yellow, but I didn't need another yellow one or whatever. But yeah, there's a little fluctuation in between with all of them. So yeah, I'm curious just to see differences in babies' coloration as they grow up. Does it make a difference? Do I see more reds? I would assume more red.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you bring a breed of red to red, I'm wondering if you'll still produce blues or yellows, and that's the fun part, right? Is like we aren't even close to scratching the surface of selective breeding for these animals.
Oh, and there's and that's the thing. Like, the other thing too is there's so many, even with the animals we have, like that we have in our house, in our collection. I'm pretty sure I can breed for like the next 1,000 years without hitting like inbreeding with 20 adults that are all basically wild caught.
Right. It probably would take you 25 years to hit animals that were like only 25% related.
Right. Like it would. Yeah. So that's the nice thing too, is like I can produce a ton of unrelated stuff. It's not like we have a genetic bottleneck we're going to run into. Like, even there's way more Ackies produced in the US every year. There is way less Ackies than 20 that ever came into the country.
No, absolutely. But I mean, if you look at the general health of Ackie monitors, so I really do think diversity is extremely important. But I also think that, like, this idea of bottlenecking is a little overhyped when it comes to reptiles. People have to understand that reptiles evolve way, way slower than mammals do. So when we think about like mammalian depression inbreeding, it happens way more rapidly than reptilian.
In mammals, you'll see it sometimes in first generation, but definitely second, third for sure.
Exactly.
In reptiles, you can be 10 generations in before you start to see stuff.
Yeah.
But it does still happen. So you look at bearded dragons, the face of a beardy versus a wild bearded dragon. It's like comparing a wolf to a pug.
Yeah, they look very different. It's funny. I was having a conversation with someone. I was at a local pet store, and they were sharing that information with me, and they pulled up pictures on there. And this was literally like 3 weeks ago. And I looked at the differences, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like that's an issue.
Yeah, and you don't realize it because like most of what we see kind of looks like that. So it's not like they're running around outside our houses like they are over there. So not like
exactly. All right. Anything else that's like noteworthy with peacocks before I kick you out of here?
No, I think I've really covered all the things that I really love about them. But no, anybody that's interested in them, can always shoot me a message. Find me and Erica on social media. And if you search the Offenburg Eye Project and on social media, hashtag that pops up. I think you'll see a lot of the pictures we posted on Peacocks over the years.
That would have been nice to know at the beginning of the freaking episode.
I just remember that I don't use it that much, but it's out there.
I'm over here scrolling through your page trying to find pictures.
Yeah, right. I probably should have told you I hashtag them sometimes. But no. So anybody that has any questions on them, because feel free to come ask and let us know. And my biggest thing is to everybody is find a species like that you give a crap enough about to do this with. Every
Right.
single species we keep in captivity eventually will stop being in captivity.
Right.
So my favorite thing to do at reptile shows is go to the wild caught tables that everybody walks away from, and I go, tell me a thing you got that you don't know what it is. Like that you couldn't speciate, you just got it, or some weird lizard that you don't know what. I want something dumb and weird, even if it's. I don't care if it's $4 or 4,000. I want to see something unique, and then learning about it, and then building this could. Oh my God, electric blue day geckos. Had people done that in the past? They were $25 a piece. I never bought them because they were cheap and they were coming in all the time, and then they shut off. And now there's only specific people breeding them, and the diversity disappeared. And every single species can do that.
Right.
Chinese water dragons just did that. Tell me you saw that coming.
Nope.
Right? They're in every pet store since the dawn of time.
Right. I'm still convinced they're not an easy species to keep.
Yeah, they're not. And they need a big enclosure. And the people breeding them they're in 8x4x4s.
Right. So it's crazy.
Yeah, but that it can happen so quick. So, next time you're at a show, look for something little and unique. Get excited, learn about it, find something you're passionate about, pick some oddball species that nobody cares about, and be the champion for that species. Even if it doesn't matter what it's worth or not worth, one of my favorite things to breed is long-tailed grass lizards. They're feeders.
They're so cool, though. They're so cool.
And they hatch out.
I see them. I see them at my PetSmart, and I'm like, I kind of want to buy you, and I'm like, no, you're a PetSmart animal. I'm not going to do it.
When they hatch, their tail's bright orange, and it's so heavy they can't run with it. So if you spook them on a smooth surface, they burn out because they can't run because they can't drag the weight of their tail, and it's hilarious. And then they just tongue flick their little tagus, their little finger-sized tagus.
Cool animals.
Exactly. But yeah, just that's the one thing. That's what keeps me excited. I
like that.
Where do I find something like that just makes me excited?
I like that aspect too. And there's so many benefits, right? Of the choosing the unknown or new species, or the number one, right? You get an opportunity to get hands-on experience of information that no one, maybe a few people are also gathering of the animals, right? Number two is, you if you're able to successfully produce a rare species, right? And you speak that passion out, you create your own market. That's a good thing, right? From a business standpoint. But number three is you are contributing massively to the captive husbandry reproduction of an animal that otherwise no one gave the time of day to. There's so much dopamine that just bursts through the brain when you're able to do that.
Right. And it's the conservation of the diversity of animals we have available to us too.
Right.
Because at some point they stop coming in. And if there isn't an assurance colony or enough people working with them or enough attention to them, they just vanish.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then they're the animals we talked about. Oh, in fact, do you remember 10 years ago when we used to have such and such?
Back in my day, right?
Exactly. And I'm telling you, as somebody who's able to say that a lot now, it sucks to know how many different species over the years we lost to just time and no one paying attention, or they weren't the hot thing at the time, so they vanished. And maybe we'll get them back, maybe we won't. And there's stuff like that pops up all the time that I see come in and people are freaking out about. And I'm like, I remember when they used to come in all the time, but then they don't. And then they're like legend, the legend of when this used to come in.
Right. Oh man. Well, I'm glad that you are working at the forefront with Peacock Monitors. You got plenty of animals to continue these projects. I'm going to kick you out to the back. I want you to hang put for 2 seconds. I have a question for you. I'm going to wrap this thing up.
Sounds good, man.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Good talking to you, man.
Oh, as always.
All right, everyone. That is episode 127 of the Retic Lounge in our first species spotlight and a good bit. Yeah, I'm excited to jump into the monitor game. I'm excited that Ryan is getting Ryan and Erica are getting the ball rolling with these Peacock monitors. As we talked about at the end, like the fascination of these more less kept, less appreciated species. It's something that drives me. But yeah, I mean, I want to also just give a huge shout out. I didn't do this at the beginning, but for our Patreon members, if you guys want to join us, it's only $5 a month. You can support with more. That link is in that right down there, patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. As far as reticulated pythons goes, I promise there is not a more active community out there. And we have probably close to 100 members that not only are retic enthusiasts, but have so many other diverse species that they keep. And we are species inclusive. So with that being said, we'll see you in a week next Friday for episode 128.